All right, welcome everyone to Thrive and Beyond. We have Megan on the line here with us. Megan, before I chop up your last name.
Le Vu.
There you go, Meg Le Vu. And Megan, you have been featured in the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, and...
Welcome to Thriving Beyond, the podcast with stories of thriving through when the obstacles are far from few. Here's your host, whose own story has been featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Vidal Cisneros Jr.
Le Vu.
There you go, Meg Le Vu. And Megan, you have been featured in the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, the Good Men Project as well. And you also have your own podcast. What is the name of your podcast, Megan?
The podcast is called Get in the Lab. And we started out as an audio show. And then we quickly went into video. So you may find like old shows that are still on iTunes, but I'm not actually posting currently in iTunes. I actually stopped that last year in August or so when I decided to break up with iTunes. So now I'm posting directly to Facebook and YouTube.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you could sum up what you do in the world for our listeners here on Thrive and Beyond, because it's all about the inspirational stories and what you bring to the table and what you're doing in the world. So if you could sum it up in one sentence or less, what would that be?
I help business owners make better videos to market their business.
Right on. I love video.
Yeah, I love video too.
So for those of you listening, go check out Get in the Lab and see. And you also have, you said some videos on YouTube. I'm pretty sure of that, right?
I have a couple.
Oh, yeah. She's all about the video marketing. Love it.
Yeah.
So is there a morning ritual that you implement at all?
I drink Clarity in the morning, which is I drink Calibrate, which is a powdered drink that is from the company Clarity. And I started to work with them just really recently, like 2 months ago. And that has actually replaced my coffee. And I was kind of sad that it was replacing my coffee because I love coffee. Like I bought a cabinet just for my coffee.
Oh, me and you resonate so well now. Wow.
Man, I was like, that's one of my goals. Like when I started to produce some extra income on the side, I was like, I'm just going to buy this little cabinet for my coffee. I'm going to have like the coolest coffee gadgets and do pour overs for myself. And just like 2 months ago, I started to drink this drink called Clarity or Calibrate. And I was like, holy crap, I don't even crave my coffee anymore. I'll still drink coffee for sure because I just love the way it tastes and I love coffee. But that's kind of replaced my morning ritual because I would wake up at like 6 or 6:30 or even earlier than that. I would just, kind of brainlessly make my coffee. You know, you can do it on like autopilot now because you love it so much. So I would just brainlessly make my coffee and then sit down at the computer and then check my email and do all that social stuff in the morning and see what's on the queue. But now I replaced it with that. So that's crazy to me. Yeah, I'll link it up. It's crazy to me because it's not only replaced my coffee, but it allows me to heal better. So with this drink, it actually gets at the genetics of your body. So not to go too much into it, but just like I think it's crazy because I'm still experimenting with it, and it's like kind of making me do a double take on it. Like, oh yeah, because I actually worked with them. They sponsored me to go to podcast tournament. And I was like, cool, I'll check it out. Like, because I'm, you're sponsoring me, right? And then I check it out and I'm like, holy crap, you can't. I'm like really kind of, scratching my brain like, holy crap, like this really works. And so I've been dealing with a back problem for like since 2012 when I used to work in hazmat and always had chronic pain. And it's slowly been helping me like just feel more springy. Like I climb a lot now. And every time I would dismount from climbing, I would inevitably injure myself. And lately, I haven't been feeling that. So I'm just saying, like, it's a little weird to me. I'm still experimenting with it, but I'll link it up so you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's usually my morning routine. So drink some Clarity instead of coffee, light breakfast, get on the computer and start working. That's all I do.
Right on, and that's a good segue for us because we actually met at Podcast Movement last year in Forward, Texas. And that was a phenomenal time. We got to do some, what was it? They had the Mechanical Bull
Yeah.
at the stockyards, and it
Yeah.
was fun. So if you're from Texas, yes, we know how you get down.
Yeah, and it is freaking hot out there. I was like, what? What?
Right.
I was a little like befuddled. So hot.
Yes, it was. I'm not used to that kind of heat, but it was
I'm
still
nice.
nice.
Yeah.
So to dive back into it, what are some of the toughest challenges, Meg, that you faced way back when? Maybe it could be some business or personal challenges. You know, a lot of people that come on the show, it's usually the most traumatic storms. And I've been surprised with what some people have shared through some of their experiences and their challenges. So really, we want to dive deep into the point where you were facing your toughest life challenge. What did that look like?
I haven't talked about this in a while, but it was really the catalyst behind really getting into personal development, talking about my story on podcasting. And that was being bankrupt at 22. So what had happened was I was in a very destructive relationship with somebody, and they basically took advantage of me, and I let that happen because I was young and naive and kind of really not paying attention to any of the red flags and signs, and really being very too optimistic at that point when I was very young. And that led to being taken advantage of and being left with a bankruptcy, because I had tried to pay off this debt. Like, oh, I was in this really, crappy relationship. Maybe I should repent by paying this debt off that isn't mine. Basically, he used my credit cards. And so I tried to pay it off for like a year. And I remember being 22. 22. And I'd actually just moved into this house. Kevin and I were just roommates, just friends at the time. And I was looking at this American Express bill, and I was just like, oh, it was like $1,000. But at the point when you're in college, you can't, you don't have that money. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot continue to do this. Like, this debt is not even mine. In a way, it's kind of mine, but in a way, it's not even mine. I didn't spend this money. All of my working and working really hard, and I felt like I had this secret was going towards this thing that was just really dragging me down. And so I decided to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy at that time, and I just felt like a complete failure because, for one, my parents didn't know at the time. And I was really trying to hide it, and I was really ashamed of that because I had let somebody do that to me. And I really began to get very angry with myself and very punishing with myself. And so I just held on to this anger and this hate for such a long time, for that person and for myself, for a really long time. And it wasn't until sort of my last year in my corporate job, working hazmat, and I was commuting out to Indio. I had a conversation with a former supervisor, and she was super into heal yourself and self-help books and stuff like this. And so she was talking to me, and we started to talk about anger and how damaging it is, and how whenever I talked about this person or this point in my life that I had this thing on my record, it stays on your record for 10 years or so, I would get this physiological reaction, and my belly would heat up. I would get kind of this energy of rage because I just felt so wronged. And at the same time, I felt really kind of powerless because I let that happen to myself. So I just felt mad at myself. And she would say to me, if you're able to forgive him, you can be free, or something like that. But she was talking along the lines of forgiveness. And when she said forgiveness, I was like, hell no, he doesn't deserve it. Right. I think a lot of people kind of who go through being wronged in such a way, they'll say that they don't deserve it, and that's because you don't want to let go of your hate, because you feel like, if I hate this person, I have power. I have in some way some control over that time, and so I didn't want to give that. It's like, why should I give you forgiveness? Like that, you're a despicable person. And over time, she gave me this book called Heal Yourself. And it's this really colorful book, very woo-woo. But I read it, and there was a chapter in there about forgiveness. And then when I read it, it was it really just spoke to me. I started to cry a lot reading this book because there was so much of me that was pent up and really damaging. And so I kept reading this book. I went back and I talked to her about it and talked about what it would feel like. And I remember the exercise that the book talked about as far as forgiveness was, if you could see that person on the street, and you kind of like do a little check of how to forgive somebody, and see if you have actually forgiven somebody. If you would see that person on the street, just smile at them. You don't have to say anything. Just smile and move on with your day. Like, you let it go. And I just kept practicing this vision over and over. I never saw this person since then, but I just kept practicing this vision over and over again. And forgiveness is not something that you just like flip a switch to do. It's something that you keep kind of coming back to, and it comes in waves, and you kind of keep reminding yourself of the goodness and the benefits of forgiveness. And when that happened, I think things really started to change. Like, I started to let in more people. I started to make real friends. I feel like that time, that person died because it was so much of a kind of a victim person, very naive person. There's nothing wrong with being naive. I still like that there's naive things about myself. But that person that just wasn't paying attention to the signs. There were so many red flags that I just ignored because of whatever. And so from there, I started to read that book. I started to make really good relationships with people at work. One of them introduced me to this book called The 4-Hour Workweek. Yep. And then I read that and I got really mad. And I was like, holy crap, I'm being freaking bamboozled right now. I need to get out of here. And I like, for once in my life, I was passionate about doing something. Because I would tell this to, my audience, which is when I was in high school, I would think that I was going to die early because I wasn't passionate about anything. Like, maybe I'm going to die early because I haven't found my passion. They always tell you this, find your passion when you're young. And I was like, dude, I'm not passionate about anything. I'm good at a lot of things, but there's nothing to where I would wake up in the morning and I'm like, I got to do that. And so when I read that book, and then I started to kind of do some research online and learn from other people, like David Siteman Garland. He was a big inspiration back in 2012. I started to really think that things were possible. And then I was waking up with like, ooh, I can do that, which is a totally different feeling. And I'm sure you can kind of relate when you wake up in the morning. You can't wait to produce your show, or you can't wait to book this guest or whatever, and to produce this content and to give yourself a voice. And then through podcasting, when I didn't do video yet, I was just pouring out all this crap that I had. And I was just giving myself a voice. And for like 2 to 3 years, it was just like therapy. Finally speaking up, finally saying something. It didn't matter how many listeners I got. It was just like, I even wrote like 2 books that were just based on my story. I mean, nobody read it, but for me to just get it out and to therapeutically write it down. And so now I'm here.
Megan, you're amazing.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for pouring into our listeners right now and sharing your heart and stuff that you went through. And I can relate to the bankruptcy thing. You're not alone, Megan. And I'm sure listeners out there, somebody out there listening is like, oh, I can relate to both of you. And that's the premise of why I wanted to start this podcast. Years back, I started off the complete opposite of how you started off, Megan. I started off doing live Google Hangouts. Okay.
Really?
I was insane. I was a nutcase. So you didn't just get to hear my voice and me, mess up and just be me with all these rough draft moves. But it lit me up being live and just being on camera and just sharing my story and doing exactly what I was doing right now. It was called Empowerment Hour, and it was with a friend of mine. And I still remember the first episode we did, episode 1. I poured out my heart, and it was a heartfelt story. And I'm just like, I got to a point where I just started bawling.
Really?
It was a threshold moment. I'm so glad my buddy Eddie was there, because then he took over and he's like, see, this is what happens when you dig deep. And then after that point, it just became so much easier, once you start pulling away the Band-Aids. So it's a beautiful transformation to see you go through all of that, go through the rough draft moves, go through the hurdles.
Funnily enough, like, I never told my parents, like, upfront. I think I told my mom, but I never, like, wanted to tell my parents up front. If you're Asian, like that's the last thing you want to do is like confront your parents. It's like so scary. So I was writing a lot during that time as well, and then I would do like an audio blog, and actually apologized in this blog to like my parents, and it was like I would just start crying on the thing. I just kept it out there. You probably won't find it now because I stopped paying for the domain and the hosting, but like I just put everything out there. And yeah, crying is just like, you got to do it. You got to do it.
You got to get off your chest. And for me, you know, having this rough exterior, I was like, I'll be good, Eddie. Let's just roll with it. Let's just do it. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, I was like, oh, dang. There was a lot I still had to exercise out of me. And that's why I love writing. I love podcasting. I love everything I'm doing. Just getting it out there. And there's just so this therapeutic benefit, like you said. Nice. And Megan also has a book, and we're going to talk about that at the end. And sure. Megan, you shared so much. We could just start unpacking that. But let's go into a powerful mantra, like one of those woo mantras that at first you were like, I'm not resonating with it. Then all of a sudden you said, wow, this actually is feeding something within me.
Definitely. The first one that I learned was from that book, and that's called Heal Yourself. And the first one was called I'm Ready to Receive. Well, the first one I learned was I'm ready to forgive, right? I'm ready to forgive. And I was like, when I said it, I was like, no, I'm not. But I keep saying it over and over like a mantra. And soon enough, it would chip away. And it made me able to forgive. And so that was the first one. And I try to exercise that more and more because you forget how hard it is to forgive if you come across people who are crappy and you don't want to give them that. You want to hang on to your anger for some reason. And maybe I'm just that kind of person. But that's something that I like to say to kind of just like get back on track. And the next one is I'm ready to receive. With that, like that can be used in so many things. It's like this year, we've said this a lot this year because I feel like I've put in my dues as far as making content, discovering what my voice is through putting out content. It's been about 3 years of doing this stuff. And so I'm ready to move on to whatever that next level is. And I just love to say that. So I'm ready to receive. And then the last one, my husband actually taught me, and he said, making money is easy. And he taught me that when we were 22. Making money is easy. And that kind of offended me a little bit because I always thought that making money was supposed to be hard and you have to put in long hours. And sure, we work really hard for our money, but we love it. So it's like, are we really working very hard? Well, yeah, we are, but I wouldn't want to be doing any other work. So those are the 3 mantras that we have.
I love those.
Yeah.
I love the forgiveness one, and I love the money one. Those are all powerful. So definitely, if you're listening, take note and write those down. So what's some of the best advice that you've received from a mentor or somebody out there that was coaching you and you said, okay, this is great advice. This definitely helped me get past that huge hurdle that I was facing. Can you remember a time like that? Definitely.
My first coach was Greg Hickman. And you don't know him? Yeah, Greg. And so he took me on, and I was just so new, just such a noob. And he introduced me to a lot of people, but he really encouraged me to put out that story, that bankruptcy story, and to put a voice to that and put it like in actual content form. So that was really important during that time. Another one, I have a lot of mentors that I'm really grateful for. Jared Easley, he always says, be the rising tide. I think that is a great piece of advice and just a way to look at entrepreneurship online because just this year we're having a live event later on in August called Get in the Lab Live. And I'm now in a position to be able to provide a platform for other content creators such as myself. So we're going to have 4 speakers and myself. So we got 5 people up there on stage for this event here in Huntington Beach. Another one is know your numbers. Business is a numbers game. I think for 2 to 3 years, I really tried to hide away from it because I said, I'm not good at math. And I would always think like, that's that's somebody else's job. Like, I can't do that. But you need to know your numbers. You need to know where you're at. You need to have a baseline and have it be measurable. And so when we started to do that, as far as like, what's my social presence? What are the leads that I'm capturing? What are the leads that are converting? What are the lead magnets that are working? What kind of videos are working? We look at the numbers, we look at the data, and that is able to direct your next move. So you're not moving in terms of A to B, B to C, a very linear sort of planning that people like to do. Like, oh, let me start a podcast. Let me go get a sponsor. Let me go make some money. Like, that is not realistic to what happens. And so I say don't plan, strategize. And when you can have a strategy, it's if this, then that. If this, then that. So when you think along the lines of strategy, that's more akin to what happens in real life, you know? So if this happens, if somebody says yes to me, this will happen. If somebody says no to me, I'm going to do this. So there's less stress that can happen to you when you strategize, because you in a way, you rise above, you get into the atmosphere, and now you can see all the routes, right? It's like Google Maps. When you're in traffic, you can only see that first car in front of you. You're like, oh, crap, you know, it can only move this far. But you need to rise above. You need to get above the traffic and see what's going on. And another piece of advice that my friend Aaron gave me, who's going to be speaking at Get in the Lab Live, he said, and I was asking him this question in the context of, what social platforms should I focus on? And I think everybody has this question. And he said, go to where your money is. Not go to where the money is, but go to where your money is. Because, like, yeah, Periscope has money in it. Yeah, Snapchat has money in it. But, like, where are you most effective? Where is your money at? I love Snapchat, but I'm not necessarily making, like, hella sales off of Snapchat. My lead generators are still Facebook, and now Instagram's kind of popping up now, and YouTube is like a third. So you need to be really clear about where you're effective and where you can make your money, despite having all of these really cool, like, social platforms to be on. So, and then lastly, another one is figure out your go-to move. Like, in the world of, like, online entrepreneurship, there's a lot of fads that go on. And so it's hard to really nail down a repeatable form of revenue to be generated consistently. And so, you know, it's really important for content creators who are in this for the long run, or in this to make money and to provide for their family, is to have a go-to move. This is something one of my mentors taught me, and is always kind of drilling this in my head, like, where's your go-to move? Where's your go-to move? And for me, the go-to move for me is basically consulting and service. Like, I don't want to do service forever, but it's my go-to move if I need to generate cash flow. And so I think that's super important to just have down, because otherwise you're aimlessly putting out content, aimlessly trying to chase the next lead generator or whatever. So you need to have a strategy in place.
Wow, if you're a video marketer, you just had a dose of freaking bombs right there go off.
Yeah.
And I love some of the analogies you actually painted, because you're talking to the gamers, you're talking to the sports fans when you say figure out your go-to move, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're a gamer, you get that. What's your go-to move? And then I love how you mentioned Jared, Be the Rising Tide.
I love Jared.
He's awesome. Yeah. Jared Easley, he's one of the founders of Podcast Movement. And go to where your money is. I love that too. See, for myself, it's the webinars, it's being live, it's just live streaming. You know,
yeah, live is gonna blow up, man. I'm getting into that.
Can't wait to see.
Yep.
Right on. So the next question is, which is well, you pretty much mentioned your 2 to 3 step formula, but if you can help somebody right now that is facing bankruptcy or is facing some of the adversity that you faced back then, what are 3 steps or a little formula that you could give them to help them push beyond that?
Oh, man. Well, if you're dealing with bankruptcy, you just need to take care of it. Like, do whatever it takes. You got to file. You got to, like, you know, take up an extra job or whatever. If you file for bankruptcy, good, it's gone. It's off your record. Don't go and open up another, you know, credit card line or anything. Be really kind of tight with your money. Be frugal. Just be smarter with your money. You know, if you can get into ways to where you can you can start to reinvest back into something that's gonna help you financially. But you just need to get your shit in order, basically, right? Like you just need to get back to ground zero. Like, and I'm gonna say it like that because that's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be nice about it. Like you're in a really crappy situation. I always took responsibility, maybe too much responsibility for that happening in my life, but I allowed that to happen. And people need to take responsibility for why they're in shitty circumstances, right? And it's a situation. That's all it is. You can rise above it. As long as you're not dead, you can wake up and change the way you think about how you're going to make your next move. And you need to be really clear at that point. I had a little bit like of an epiphany or like an awakening, like, okay, next time this is not going to happen. Next time I'm going to do this, right? You're going to be really stern with yourself and fix all of those mistakes, learn your lesson. It was a very hard lesson to learn early on, but I don't regret it. It's made me into who I am now, and I wouldn't be as grateful as I am today without that thing that happened. So from there, like after you get your stuff together, right? After you kind of hit a good ground zero, you forgive yourself for all of that stuff. You're in a good place. You've got a good emotional intelligence about what to do. Just be genuine and make genuine friends, right? I think if I could go back, I didn't know how to make friends because there was so much of myself that I was hiding. I wasn't real with people. And that's why I got into that relationship. I wasn't real with like family. I wasn't real with so many people because I was afraid for some reason, if I think back. So be genuine and make genuine friends. I think that's weird for me to say, but like that's really what kind of held me back. I wasn't genuine, so I didn't have genuine friends.
I feel you. Transparency is everything. Being authentic to who you are. And that's the one thing that I loved about you. I remember some time ago when I first saw you do an interview with Kamanzi. Who's an awesome guy and a mentor of mine, and I'm sure of yours as well. And I was just like, wow, Megan is just so authentic, so spunky. She knows who she is, right? You just step into that. You ooze that. And that's what I believe your secret sauce is, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you. And next would be original and own it. I tell a lot of people who, I teach how to make better videos, and the trump card is, besides all the fancy tech and the fancy gear, your trump card is how you deliver the content, right? So the last thing that people want to see is a robot reading some script. So be original and own it. If you move your hands a lot, like own it. If you're like, if you don't move your hands a lot, like own it. Like it's okay. It's never a better time to be you, and that's really liberating. So, be original and own it. Definitely. And then, like I said, don't plan, strategize. If you can strategize, you take away a lot of the overwhelm, a lot of stress. Like, let me give you an example. Say you're going to go campaign for, #1 best-selling author in Amazon for your book, Fidel. And maybe you don't get it immediately. Maybe you don't get it like at 24 hours, like everybody says, like I did. I didn't get it at 24 hours. I had to wait like 2 weeks, right? Because I made so many mistakes. But after like 2 weeks, in like the 2-week mark, we hit #1 bestseller for the Video Marketer's Cookbook. And I was like, okay, cool. I can relax. You know what I mean? So there's going to be a lot of hangups in your life where you could freak out. You could get overwhelmed. You could like hit a breaking point or a melting point. But if you know the steps of your life and what it takes to that you want, you get less freaked out, or not even. You're like, all right, cool. That didn't happen. This is what's going to happen right now. You know what I mean? And then lastly, I would say that, the reason why I have my show in seasons is because I kind of let ideas come to the surface, live in the sun, and then I let them die. And then I'm reborn into this new improved version of myself. I have a new improved version of the show, and everything around me is kind of reborn. It's kind of like the seasons of the year, right? You have the summer where things are all cool. You have the fall where things are kind of dying out. Things are like trending out. And then you have the winter where things are dead. You take time to recoup. You look at your mistakes. You take stock. You take inventory. And then in the spring, you just like come to life and you're this new, better person. And so I let this theme of letting it die and being reborn kind of cycle through the different cycles basically that run in my business, that run in my life. And I welcome it. I embrace it.
life's about seasons, evolving, rebooting. That's just the way it is. And I go
Yeah.
back to some of the gamer mentality too with
Yes.
the rebooting, right? I know you're a gamer.
Yes. Best believe.
I love that. So last question here before we get into your video cookbook is a bestseller now, right? So we're going to ask this last question before we get into that. So 100 years from today, if you were to leave a legacy and there was a statue made in Meg Le Vu's name, all right, the one thing that you want to be remembered for.
Okay. It'll say Meg was a really dope person to share a drink with in the most randomest spot, in the most random place and time, and she got me to remember what was truly important about my life.
I love how you just did that. That is awesome. Okay, so tell us more about your video cookbook that recently hit the bestseller on Amazon.
Yeah, wasn't recently. It was a minute. So it was,
Okay.
yeah, but we hit #1 bestseller. I don't know what rank it's at right now, but basically it's a video marketing kind of guide, a basic kind of overview of what I do and how I use video to market my business and to gain more leads and more sales and stuff like this. And it's written in a way that's based on some of my favorite cookbooks, like 4-Hour Chef and a Korean cookbook. And so I really love cooking. If I could, like, I enjoy cooking more than I do eating, if that's a little weird, but I really enjoy that process. I enjoy the creation of it, the creativity of it. I'm inspired from my mom, who always is just inventing things. And, every time we go to the restaurant, she's like, oh, I can make that. And so now I'm kind of like that too. And of course, it helps that Kevin always loves my cooking. So it's based on cooking, and so I like to put together recipes, so to speak, of how to put together better videos for your business and your brand. And so that's what it is. And then we did a Kickstarter. After we got #1 bestseller, I was like, okay, sweet, let's go run a Kickstarter because I want to make a pretty book. Like, I always wanted a book that was like nice color pages, and like, I know this is kind of vain, but like, everybody can do an Amazon book, a digital book, and have it formatted and all this crap. But I wanted a pretty book. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, really important to me to have a paperback and a hardcover. And so I searched far and wide for like the right printer and all this stuff. But yeah, we ran this Kickstarter campaign to raise the money for it because I knew it was going to be, more, it was going to be expensive. So we ran a campaign for about a month. And then just before we hit our end mark of that month, we hit our goal at like, I forget, like, I don't know, 2,400. My goal was 2,000. And so that gave me the funds to go and make, a real nice book. And then I had so much fun, like picking it up from the printer, packaging it myself and shipping it myself. I captured it all in video. It was in a little vlog series. And then, yeah, so now I'm here. I got a couple like still stashed in my room somewhere, and I talk about it every now and again. And that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Where can we find your book? What's your domain name URL?
It's thevideomarketerscookbook.com.
Right on. Yeah, thank you so much, Meg, for joining us. And is there anywhere else people can connect with you online?
Definitely. I'm on Facebook like 24/7. You can find me there at Get in the Lab podcast. And I'm on Snapchat too, but it's my maiden name. So it's Megan.Pangan. So I could spell that for you in the show notes or something.
Sounds good. Definitely check the show notes. Megan, it's been a blast, and I'm hoping to catch up with you at the next podcast movement.
Yes, sir.
All right. No matter what you're going through, keep going, keep growing, and keep thriving. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. For recaps and to claim bonus gifts, head over to thrivingBeyondPodcast.com. Keep thriving.